questions for the speakers in the comment section on our social media or on the events chat box. You can also share your perspective on the day's proceedings through your social media accounts. Don't forget to use the hashtag Dell2022 in your post and tag our official handles. We can be found at ITV News with a Z on Twitter and Facebook, and IndianTelevision.com on Instagram and LinkedIn. Now, without much further ado, let's begin with the exciting webinar with a fireside chat between Mr. Naveen Reddy, Director of Sales from Dell Technologies, in conversation with Mr. Anil Manwari, Founder, CEO, and Editor-in-Chief, IndianTelevision.com Group. This fireside chat will be followed by an exclusive panel discussion on rise of digital revolution, accelerate growth led by disruptive innovation. And for this session, we'll have our speakers as Mr. Naveen Reddy, Director of Sales from Dell Technologies, Mr. Sudhakar Reddy, Global VP, IT and Studio Operations, 88 Pictures. And the session will be moderated by Mr. Anil Manwari, Founder, CEO and Editor-in-Chief from IndianTelevision.com Group. I welcome you all and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Dinal. Wow, I've got a very handsome looking guest with me today. So how are you, Naveen?
Hey, good afternoon, Anil. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I don't want to go into that. It'll be a rather complicated, long answer, but yeah, I'm doing well. You're looking dapper.
Thank you.
Great. So let's begin by, you're in charge of one of the most important elements as far as industry is concerned, storage at Dell. So, coming back, there are certain questions which have been plaguing me. What exactly is unstructured data?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So unstructured data is that type of data within the industry, which is usually not stored in rows and columns like a typical database. Let's talk about an Oracle database or an RDBMS like thing. So it is anything like a file, email, image or video, or let's say a digital record, right, which cannot be otherwise stored in a database, is unstructured because it's not stored in a structured format like a database. And so that's unstructured data.
Okay, then there's another, many people get confused. What is object data then, if you just describe unstructured data?
Yeah, thanks. So basically, when you talk about unstructured data, there are two types and two varieties of the data that are, predominantly there in the industry. One is the file data, and the other one is the object type of data, right? So when you talk about files, as we all know that typically, like a Windows Explorer, when you expand and check what's there on our personal computer, find various files and folders and things like that. So anything to do with that kind of a storage is called file storage. And what type of data that goes into file storage? Let me give a few examples, like, some of our scanned documents in PDF formats. Nowadays, if you go to hospitals, there are a lot of digital records around pathology, right? We have digital pathology records and things, patient records, what I mean. So that's a file. Similarly, we talk about, any of our videos and, pictures. We talk about archival data and things like all of that becomes file. So that's one type of the unstructured data. The second type of the unstructured data is object storage. Object storage is basically nothing but it is, used for storing, large sets of unstructured data as objects. So that's the object storage. Like it stores data as objects, and then it converts part of the data set into smaller objects and creates a metadata. So thereby it brings in some amount of intelligence, and then it stores that intelligence in the metadata, and it stores in its own format on the storage. That's the object storage.
So what is the file format of an object data? What's the file or what's the format?
So basically it has, each object storage has its own technology, and then it distributes and creates small pieces of objects and puts them in the storage. It's a data store. So it's not like a .pdf, it's not like a .xls or something like that. So that's why it's not that kind of a file format that you've been asking me.
Okay, great. So as far as the various industry verticals go, how is data being managed by various industry verticals, whichever industry you look at, and what kind of data storage vehicles they use, what kind of And how does it work in terms of managing all of that requirement?
Yeah. So today, when we look at our broader industry, different verticals, we have this data across industry verticals like manufacturing, BFSI, media and entertainment, healthcare, life sciences. In terms of government initiatives, smart cities, there's a lot of video surveillance going on. So these are some of the examples of the verticals where this data is being created. In all of these verticals, we have data which is related to, let's say, business. In the case of manufacturing, probably SAP is one of the mainline data generator, but that is typically stored in a block storage. And that's, essentially a RDBMS type of data. Let's talk about a bank. Block storage data is something like core banking application, correct? Now, at the same time, all of these verticals also have their own unstructured data sources. For example, manufacturing would have something IoT data. There is something to do with large manufacturing facilities have video surveillance. So where do they store that data? It doesn't go into a block storage, or it doesn't go into an RDBMS, things like that. I'd like to take the example of healthcare as well. In healthcare, there is a whole new concept about digital pathology. So digital pathology is about storing, the patient records, right? Now, it's used for diagnosis, treatment, as well as research, this data set. So it has to be stored in a certain type of a storage for utilizing that information and correlating it for diagnosis, right? So that's about healthcare. So the unstructured data being generated in the healthcare. Now we'll come back to structured data in healthcare vertical. It's about, the patient database, a simple database. So that's just about, patient's name, age, address, basic other details which could be stored in a database. But the rest of the stuff which is to do with the treatment and the diagnosis, that would fall under the unstructured data set. In the smart cities, if I want to take an example under the e-governance initiative around various countries, so e-governance is not just about providing citizen information, but it's also about providing other services like I said, one of the services is security. Security is surveillance. So it's about video. So video is unstructured data in that vertical, correct? So essentially, each of the industry verticals, there are both of these types of data that are being constantly generated, structured and unstructured. And just as a matter of information, on a global basis, across all verticals, across all platforms, it is estimated that more than 80% of the data that is being generated currently is unstructured data.
Wow. So, okay. Coming back again, let's look at the Indian government scheme. I'm going to ask you, if you don't want to answer, please don't, of getting all identification systems done for Indians over the past, Aadhaar card and all of that. That must be requiring huge amounts of structured, unstructured, all of that, and huge amounts of storage.
That's correct, Anil. And then, yes, there is biometric information around an ID card today, which is Aadhaar. There's also the other details, which is to do with name, age, gender, things like that. That's stored in a database. So, and all of this together is basically the solution, which is end product is basically the Aadhaar number, right? So that's the example in the government space. I mean, thanks for bringing it up just for the explanation. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, what kind of innovations are we seeing in this space?
So, innovation essentially is all about how today there's, suddenly increase in demand, right? So essentially, if you look at, people have to innovate their products around how you could seamlessly provide growth, right? If a business is going to double in the next, let's say, for example, 1 year. I want to take an example. Let's say today there's a company which is with 100 employees, and they want to grow to 1,000 in 18 months, and after that double every year. Let's say, for example, that's the business objective. In which case, obviously there is a certain, background to the business, and obviously we should say that, look at IT innovation in such a way that it is going to align with the business objectives, right? There could be another, business objective which says, I would like to improve my customer satisfaction in the service delivery area, right? So that could lead to another IT innovation kind of thing, right? So So we'll have to tie the business objectives to the IT innovation. And innovation, it could be security as a new area of innovation as well today, because we are now surrounded by different kind of data security issues. We'll talk about it as we go along, but I'm just trying to say is that innovation is about scale, innovation is about supportability to multiple applications, innovation is about getting and storing, because we are on the subject of storage, I'm more limiting myself to data. So it's about getting the data from all aspects of the business and storing it in one central place, and thereby kind of taking the data first approach. So it's not about infrastructure to an application approach today, or an application downwards on the infrastructure side. It's all about data today. Now, you've seen several industry conversations around saying today data is the new fuel, things like that. So keeping all of this in mind, today it becomes very clear that data first approach is the best way to move forward. And if you have seen some of the evaluations of the various companies, they are valued even based on the data capital. Now, again, that leads to another conversation. What is data capital? Data capital is essentially, valuation of the data present in the enterprise or the business. So, end of the day, what we're trying to say is that whole of the innovation should be with the perspective of, keeping data first as an approach. So that's something which I want to.
Fantastic. I mean, I understand that, because archives and stuff like that are extremely valuable for if you look at it, a lot of companies tend to underinvest in having understudies for their data. They just invest in one, though people say that it's going to last forever. But they always, it's always preferable to back up your data and have a separate backup in another location. Am I right with that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's about data as a backup strategy. But how can we even monetize data? Today, people are talking about monetizing the data that is present in the business, right? Like, for example, any retail business which is on the internet, they are looking at the behavior of the customer, and then getting a lot of information about what are the kind of products that the potential customer is browsing through, and then his behavior over the weekends and things like that. A lot of analytics is being done. So how are they doing this analytics? They're essentially capturing all that, every bit of movement that a particular customer is doing on the website, and where's that's nothing but data, information that is stored and analyzed, and then they're using it for business benefits.
So it should not be looked at as an expenditure, but as an investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you have all your business data in one place, it's easier to manage. It's also, we're talking about investment, because it's going to return again meaningful business outcomes. So that's the reason why it's an investment. I would not call it as an expenditure. So obviously, when you're generating data, data is of course the IP, and it has to be managed well.
Great. So, in terms of the M&E sector, yours is a pretty prominent company which plays in this industry vertical. So, what are some of the best use cases you've seen? What are some of the challenges you've seen? What are some of the solutions that customers are looking for, and how have you all solved those needs?
Yeah, so before I get to the use case, Anil, I'd like to spend a little bit of time about Dell Technologies in the M&D vertical, media and entertainment vertical, right? If where Dell Technologies has multiple product lines, right? Amongst multiple product lines, I would like to pick up the storage specific area today and talk about a company which was called Isilon Systems. Now, this is a very familiar name in the M&D industry vertical, because this is a company which was created to create a technology for a specific media and entertainment company. And then from there, they went on to acquire more and more customers to provide data storage solutions. Then on, Isilon Systems was acquired by EMC, which eventually got acquired by Dell Technologies. So we are part of Dell Technologies under the storage portfolio, under the group called Unstructured Data Solutions. So that's the journey of the unstructured data solutions within Dell Technologies. And that's in the storage specific area. And staying on the media and entertainment vertical, from Dell Technologies, we have solutions for the industry vertical for the workstation, storage, and servers. So we have technologies for today's demands and future demands for this specific vertical. And we are able to offer all these solutions to customers, for the specific requirements. Now, if we are talking about especially the storage customers in M&E vertical, for Dell around the globe, if you look at, we have something like 2,000 plus customers, right? And these are all from the media and entertainment vertical. And I'm also very happy to inform that 8 of the top 10 worldwide broadcasters use Dell Technologies storage for their solutions. And in the year 2020, we received the Emmy Award for technology innovation. And that's our background in the industry. So having said that about the media and entertainment vertical and Dell's position in the industry, we talk about use cases that we service in this vertical is around media asset management, rendering, editing workflows, broadcast specific areas. And then also now it is all about OTT. Because if you have seen, the sudden consumption of this M&E IP is increased multifold over a period of time, especially in the pandemic time. And now the delivery is through OTT, through mobile, and things like that. So these are some of the use cases that are evolving and also growing rapidly. So some of the examples that I'm able to give to you at this point in time.
Okay, interesting. Now, so what are some of the major trends in industry that you've observed as you've been observing? You mentioned OTT. What are the other trends? The amount of data that is being put out there is humongously multiplying. Managing data is becoming very, very complex. Apart from also having it easily accessible is another challenge. So what are the trends that you're observing?
Yeah. So, if you look at, there are several, observations which have been made in the industry over the last 2 to 3 years. And, some of the top, trends that are there, obviously you said it right. It's about increased consumption of, data in the M&E vertical. And then new ways of delivering content. We talk about OTT, we talk about mobile, and things like that. Apart from that, there's a lot of innovation which is happening in terms of remote production, right? Unlike in the past, where we were in the pre-pandemic scenario, it was not remote production. Everything was live, and everything was right in face to face and things like that. So that isn't the case now. So remote production is something which is becoming increased trend, which I come to know from some of my customers and colleagues from the industry. And this is an important aspect. That is what I've been informed. The other thing is that there is a lot of consumption around 4K and 8K. So obviously, and beyond, people are the industry is getting prepared for beyond 8K. Right? So all of these are some of the key industry trends. Now, if we were to, now these are also the I would say this would become part of the businesses in the M&E vertical. So obviously every business in the M&E vertical would like to meet up to these business demands, right? So from that point of view, let's tie the innovation aspect, right? If you were to tie the innovation aspect in this growing industry vertical, is that one has to be agile, one has to be scalable, one has to be in a position to grow rapidly, right, to meet the demands of the business. So that is something which I would like to highlight at this point in time.
Okay, and I believe a lot of research you'll have done around this, the trends, and you'll have also been adapting to the needs.
Yeah. So these are the trends that we're observing. So I'm talking about the top 3-4 trends, right? Obviously, there is a security as a trend which is there. Data security. What I meant was basically data security as a trend. Correct. So these are things that are constantly evolving, and we are now surrounded by ransomware attacks, right? It was earlier across the border, but now it's all over the place, and we are experiencing them in India. In fact, I myself, on a personal basis, been impacted very minutely by an incident of a ransomware attack. So security is another one evolving, which is in the current day context.
Okay, so what challenges does this throw up for the various players in the ecosystem, whether it's broadcasters, whether it's producers? And India is mainly made up of a lot of the production houses are mom and pop kind of operations. They've not really gone to the level of studios like in the US. So, comparing to if you're reflecting upon what happened in the US as the studios evolved, what do we see happening here as far as this sector is concerned, as far as IT and storage is concerned?
Yeah. So if we were to look at the way the industry has evolved over the last few years, not just the pandemic, even the pre-pandemic era, and in the current hybrid environment, is essentially how do we meet up with the new business demand? Now, business demand is coming in different forms and shapes, right? Now, let's talk about a simple growth. Tomorrow, let's say, for example, M&D business gets a huge project around production and pre-production and post-production area. How do they meet with the demand, right? So it's all about how do we scale, okay? So the challenges currently, which I feel, or I would say, opportunity which is there for the M&D vertical in India is basically to try and look at it from a holistic approach, especially when there's a increased business demand. So the idea is to remove those challenges which come in the way of growth. Some of the challenges that I've noticed is basically around customers using siloed solutions. I would say even disparate systems. You have one kind of a storage subsystem for a specific activity and another kind of a storage technology from a different vendor for another area of operation, right? So it was okay for the moment in time because the business was small, and then siloed solutions probably were financially and economically more fitting the bill. But today, if you were to grow with the business and meet the demand that is coming up, and we'll have to look at a more holistic approach, and also look at the complex workflows that are there now in the M&D vertical, right? If you were to meet with the complex workflows that are there and that speed to deliver the product. So if a business is not able to deliver it, or a company is not able to deliver it, there is somebody else who's probably in a better position to deliver will get the project. I think it's all about speed today. It's all about growth. It's all about scale today. So I would say managing these complex workflows and managing the data life cycle becomes very, very critical. If the business is able to remove these challenges, I think it's very easy and very very simple to really scale in the current day's context.
In fact, what you just said gives me a good segue to get on to our panel discussion now. So I've got this wonderful bearded gentleman, good-looking man, from Sudhakar Reddy, who looks after one of the fastest growing studios in the country. And he's, actually seen scaling up. So tell us a little bit about the journey of 88 Motion Pictures, please.
First of all, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Anil and Navin Reddy and Dell team and the India Television team for giving me
Indian Television, Sudhakar, I'm going to correct you. Indian
Television team for giving me an opportunity to part of this panel. As you rightly said, about 88 Pictures. We started almost around 5 years back, and then we have been growing, organically, and we are also starting up a couple of locations as well. There's a plan of the expansion, and when it comes to IT infrastructure, we always think organically, and we always try to adapt the solutions which are scalable and flexible, and which also give some flexibility to IT when it comes to growth, to match the production requirements.
Yeah, Sudhakar, is there a problem?
No, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Is everything okay? Because
yeah, it's fine. I'm fine. Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of 88 pictures IT, when you say so, uh, basically,
it's okay. While you get ready, so Sudhakar, I'll speak to Naveen. I'll move on to Naveen and ask him a question that in terms of the virtual production side, what changes have you seen, Naveen?
So essentially, from a remote production or the virtual production space, Anil, is that there is a lot of collaboration which is required. Right now, that collaboration, if you were to translate that into technology and delivering that, technology is basically how can we remove complexity? Simple, very simple. You have to have a lot of collaboration. You have to remove complexities. In terms of complexities, what happens is, in terms of data storage, is how can we do it better? So from Dell point of view, we strongly believe that we look at centralized, data storage solution that can start small, can start with various, kind of media types, and then scale seamlessly. Because today, as the remote production project has taken off, probably the requirement is only about, let's say, I'm taking on a lower side, possibly about 200 terabytes, right? So the business should start with the required 200 terabytes, and then should be in a position to really scale, to the next project and the next, phase of the production. So that means you need something which is easy to manage. What is the business of a production house? It's basically to go and manage the, the core product, deliver the product, finish the product and deliver it, not manage IT. I think look at IT as an enabler. So what happens is that once you solve the, the mundane tasks within IT and focus IT more towards business, and I think that's where it makes the whole life cycle simpler. So that is something which I've been hearing from some of our M&E customers. So especially when it is remote production, collaboration is key. And at the same time, the second biggest challenge that they're experiencing is how do we still stay secure in spite of the fact that we are, when they said they are operating in remotely, right? Everybody is working from home, or probably there is, exposure to the outside world, right? So there is something called data security, which is becoming center stage, right? Now, this is definitely not predictable. When a ransomware attack, for example, happens, it is not predictable that it is going to happen at a specific date and time and in a specific way. So you'll have to always be in a position to find, first identify, detect. What I mean, identify is detect that kind of a challenge and prevent it, and then save the business and go to the next level. I mean, what I mean, business continuity, right? So these are the two challenges: collaborations and security.
Fantastic. Yeah. So Sudhakar, would you like to ask Sudhakar a question? I'd love you if you could ask him a question.
Yeah.
He's a client of yours.
Yeah. So, is our client, but I think the basic question I would like to ask to the vertical, especially through Sudhakar, is, how often do you get, challenged by the business saying that tomorrow we have this new project coming up and I want you to be ready in 1 week's time? Is it a very common thing? Yeah.
Yeah, Navin, it's a very common thing, but it is a little different here when you compare the other organizations, maybe. Here, we always plan ahead. So we know that, there's a demand and supply issues all over these days. But we also face certain issues, like, we have to start a project next week. So we have to accommodate it, these are the infra we need. So based on the requirement, always we plan ahead. So we sit with the production team, what are the requirements and how many people are going to be hosted on this show, and what is the kind of storage requirement for that show. And also we understand what kind of rendering requirement. so that we plan ahead and we take the timelines. No show starts at the fullest on the day one. So we know we get some time to organize all these things, but at the beginning itself we take down everything and we study what is required and what is already there in house and what is not there and what needs to be procured. And apart from that, whenever we go ahead with any technology, we always look for some expansion scope in that. It's not that, okay, you bought this box now, so that is that's all for the life. It's not like that. We always choose scalable solutions so that whenever there is a situation to add more and more capacity, that gives us a scope to add and the same technology without any single downtime. That is our approach when it comes to the
Thanks, sir. I think I remember my conversation with Sudhakar, Anil, some time back. So we picked up on this point where Sudhakar said, we want to buy technology not for meeting today's demand, but to keep the growth in mind. And he said one specific statement at that point in time is that we should be ready for the next phase. So we picked up that, there's a couple of important, initiatives which are there in his mind. And we tied that to what is available in Dell, right? So we looked at that particular initiative and said we should look at a storage that meets today's demands and even in the near term, and should be in a position to scale to the, let's say, even 5+ years and beyond. So we looked at our solution, which is called a power scale solution, which is essentially, it starts off with a very small capacity as low as, let's say, 80 to 100 terabytes and can scale up to multi-petabytes within the same storage solution. So the customer doesn't have to invest for multi-petabytes today. The customer can start at 100 terabytes and, let's say, for example, on a spinning drive, I'm not getting into specifics and technology because we are on a subject which is not technology, but, talk about the industry. So spinning drives and then should be in a position to scale to high performance, all flash technology. So we kind of positioned the power scale offering from Dell and explain to him the benefits that are there and how they could start small and scale both in terms of capacity as well as performance, right? But then we also help him to look at how we can look at the security aspect. I think he is in that next phase of journey in terms of providing that cyber resiliency to the data that is there. They have their own current security measures.
Yeah, that's correct. Now, always, data security is on the top of our agenda. Always, data is everything for us. A single image going out is makes a big difference, and it can bring down any company to any level. So we deal with a lot of creative work. Every image is important for us.
Okay.
So Sudhakar, I'm just going to ask you, at any time in the company, how much data do you have rotating around? How many petabytes?
We have multi petabytes of data rolling every time. It's a huge so multi petabyte storage we have to manage, and it's a keep on rolling to cater multiple shows at a time. So we need to maintain a lot of storage.
So how many shows would be under production at any stage?
Roughly around 5 at least at this point of time. Yeah.
And these are for demanding international clients.
Yeah, it's from last 2 years during this pandemic, the heavy demand for the content. We are running out of content on the OTTs, and there's a huge demand from the clients as well as day to day. The content quality is getting improved, and we moved from HD to 2K, 2K to 4K, 4K to 8K now. So always when the quality is getting improved, directly the impact is on the storage. So when you're moving to HD to 2K, it may be a small number for the audience, but when it comes to storage, it directly multiplies by 4. So you need to be ready for that.
Fantastic. So what role does legacy technology play with thinking forward in terms of investing in futuristic technology, or with current technology for future, or futuristic technology for the future?
So
both of you all, actually, this is to both of you all.
So I think always we should think ahead and think about the future. So earlier we used to work completely from office, and suddenly things changed. Then everyone started working from homes, and then now it is a hybrid. So when it comes to 88 pictures, we have not changed anything in terms of the hardware much, but whatever we bought was future ready. Whether it is a graphic card, whether it's a processor, or whatever it is. So always when you're making a decision for the business, it's always supportive for the future. This kind of situation may arise in the future as well. Now we are completely ready for the future, and we are operating in a hybrid scenario now. So people can work from anywhere now.
So what challenges is this throwing up for you as a studio? How many seats do you all have? About 800 now, or how many seats?
I will not say exact number, but we are close to the number which you said. Yeah.
So what are the do you sleep?
Of course, we sleep. In the beginning, we had tough times to accommodate people for the online business or the hybrid business. But now we are stabilized from last 1.5 year, and we are peaceful now. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of planning for that, how did you all go about planning for that? Because pandemic came suddenly, and we were shutdowns happened suddenly. You all would have had to work overtime to get that in place.
Correct. So we took a pause when the lockdown was announced. We did a brainstorming within our teams, and then we come across a couple of solutions where we can implement these work from home scenarios without investing much on the existing infra. We adopted some tools to leverage that work from home scenarios, and then we worked upon the security. Because earlier everyone used to come to office and we had control on the security as well, data security. Now the data is going out, not the physical data, but you're transferring the pixels to the user's home. So that needs to be protected. So all those things, there is a lot of workaround for the security, and we had to work on the internet as well, because every user needs to have a sufficient internet to get the smooth playback of the content which they are playing at the office.
Yeah, so the workflows were recreated almost, you could say.
Even when it comes to reviews or the approval process, earlier it used to be different. Now we adopted new technologies where you can review our content from anywhere with a secured manner, and then the supervisors can approve the content for the artist.
Yeah, so you had no downtime anywhere, or you had downtime?
There's no downtime, yeah. There's no downtime at all.
And can you afford downtime?
Frankly speaking, it's not affordable.
Okay. And now let's see 88 pictures 3 years down the line.
Okay.
What do you see happening as far as your storage requirements are concerned?
Storage, I think we'll go to multi-folds. Probably, we may go up, 4 times or 5 times from now. Even if you see last 2 years, we had upgraded our storage almost 3 times.
So in 3 years, you're looking at 4 times. Wow.
Even more than that.
Because of 4K, 8K, because of 4K HDR, and because
of demand for the quality and the content.
Okay. Now coming back to Naveen on this front. So you have this client who's constantly hungry. How do you plan with this guy without making him overspend?
So, very pertinent question, and it typically applies to all of the customers which we have across the vertical. So the way and our solution is designed, and maybe I'll take a little bit of product pitch because it helps to understand a little bit better. So the way we've designed our product is basically, we are basically a scale-out architecture. So when we talk about scale-out architecture, the customer can begin the journey, like I said, at any starting point, And then after that, as they add their more storage capacity, they get their performance as well along with it. So we are basically a linearly scalable architecture, and that supports the customer's business in every aspect, because one, we're meeting to their increased demands of capacity, but at the same time also matching up to the performance requirements. Now, if a customer suddenly has a surge in performance requirements, we can mix and match performance and capacity differently. We can deliver a high performance on need basis, or also we can provide high capacities on need basis. And good part is all of these tiers of technology that I've spoken about, or performance that I've spoken about, all can work together and still look like a single storage subsystem for the customer. So if it is 88 pictures in case in point right now, and tomorrow they have a demand for just doubling their storage requirement, it's a matter of just delivering the right capacity, and then it just plugs and plays into what is already installed in a matter of about 90 seconds. Once the powering, racking, stacking of the incremental capacity is done, push of a button, our technology enables customers to increase their capacity and their performance in a matter of 90 seconds. The whole system becomes rebalanced and it all works in unison, and it's a single system that comes across to the customer. So we can meet demands not just for M&D vertical, but for any industry vertical that we are able to service the customer.
Yeah, and you keep talking about flash storage, but isn't that coming at a very high price today compared to the normal old world storage that we had?
Yeah, it is definitely expensive, I would say, because one is there's a lot of technology value, business value in it, number one. Number two is that the operational costs are low on flash technology, like the industry knows. But in the case of Dell, PowerScale, and Isilon, we can mix and match, like I said. We can add just the flash performance to the existing storage, and thereby giving the performance requirement for the customer. So yeah, we can kind of address the cost and cost challenges differently to the customers in a different way, because we have the technical advantage of mixing and matching drive technologies.
Yeah, today, it's not just about physical storage. We're also talking about virtual storage, cloud storage, and stuff like that. All of this gets integrated especially in a media company. Like he said, we have to be working off the cloud, on-prem, off-prem. So, that's a bit of a challenge for Sudhakar. Am I right, Sudhakar?
Yes, there's a challenge everywhere when you are dealing.
Not just about security, but also about having
integration. When you're dealing with size of data which we cater, so it's always a challenge for our kind of size. It's not easy to move the data to the cloud and download data from the cloud to on-prem. So that's where we look for the hybrid solutions where the data is available everywhere all the time.
Wow, that is very deep. What do you think, Naveen?
Yeah, I was just waiting. Somehow we spent nearly 42 minutes in this conversation, and somehow cloud did not come up center stage. So I was a little wondering what's going on, but thanks for asking the question. So it's all about making the right decision. So at Dell, we believe in multi-cloud technology. So we are not saying the customer shouldn't be on the cloud. We're not saying the customer should only be on prem, or we're not saying the customer should not be on cloud or things like that. We are looking at a multi-cloud approach to all of our customer requirements. Like Sudhakar said, once your data is on the cloud, then over a period of time it does become expensive, and I think customers have started to realize it now. And similarly, if let's say, for example, we talk about OpEx kind of payout because you do monthly or a quarterly payment to cloud solution providers, but those kind of advantages are they'll look very advantageous right in upfront, but there are alternatives from Dell as well to look at let's say an OpEx kind of model for storage or infrastructure for that matter, IT infrastructure that for matter. We have an offering which is called Flex on Demand. So it's almost like, just the difference is that it's on-prem. It gives the customer of being on the cloud advantage like as if it's on the cloud from a financial standpoint, because they're making their cash outflows on a period of time. So that's one advantage. So we are able to meet the cloud demand that way. The other reason why customers sometimes go on cloud is initial phase. Maybe it is easy to start off, and then they'll look at coming back on-prem. But I think what happens once the data is on the specific provider, getting it back really becomes very expensive. So we'll have to look at a balanced out strategy. Maybe some of the workloads which are very viable on operating out of cloud, maybe it makes sense to move to the cloud space. Let's say, for example, a customer has a very short-term requirement of GPU technology. Maybe he wants to use some GPU accelerator cards for about 3 months. So he could take that specific data, spin up some GPU requirements on the cloud, do the modeling and analytics or whatever kind of stuff on the cloud and get back that specific data, other than completely moving lock, stock, and barrel into the cloud, while he could keep the rest of the data on-prem. And we can also have, Dell also has the technology to, basically orchestrate data between on-prem and cloud. And that's our approach. Our approach of, looking at cloud-like scalability, cloud-like flexibility in customer environments.
In fact, I wish I'd met you 7 years ago. My company, we invested in into NAS servers and running into almost 180 terabytes, and crores of data was stored on it, which today could be valued at, and we invested crores in creating that content, and we lost all of it. All of it means we lost all of it, and there is value in that data, tremendous value, like you said, the data value, data capital, as you said. I mean, for me, currently we're making money off YouTube through our videos that we are producing. But had we had that data, I don't have the raw footage, I don't have the stock footage, nothing is left, everything's gone. I only have DVDs left. So I think it's time that, and ours was a relatively smaller company then. And we thought Dell was this awesome big monster would be very expensive. So we went for a cheaper variant. As like I said, mom and pop. But so I just wish we had met you earlier as a company, I'm telling you.
Sure. Late.
Yep.
Yeah.
We should try and discuss, the opportunity between us, maybe after this call. Yeah.
Absolutely. So coming back again, in terms of future, especially the future, where do you see the future in terms of storage, especially with the metaverse coming in, especially with NFTs coming in, especially with gaming, especially with all of these, merging television, streaming, gaming, metaverse, all of it converging. What do you see happening to the requirement for data storage?
It's just going to blow through the roof, Anil. And I would say, like I just said somewhere in the middle of the conversation, that 80% of the data that is currently being generated is unstructured. And that means, all the areas that you just now spoke about, metaverse and all of the essentially use cases for, this underlying unstructured data storage. This is only going to exponentially increase. I would, it would be not right to say it will only grow 10 times or 100 times. I would want to use the word, quote unquote, exponentially, right? And in order to meet that demand, I think, industry is constantly evolving in terms of delivering the new technologies. And I would say, it is like 10, like I said, exponents. I mean, I'm running out of words to say what's the expected growth, but, every analyst is talking about huge amount of growth. Now, not just data, obviously creating value out of that. So obviously there is going to be an increased consumption of high performance computing as well, because people would like to get outcomes out of the data, right? So there is some analytics engine, there's some AI engine being built on top of the data. So obviously driverless cars, one example you didn't mention, but or for that matter, autonomous driver assisted system. Each car generates tons of data. That data is fed back into the manufacturers, then there is a lot of analytics that's happening. So the use case are humongous. And smart manufacturing, another example. So the sources of data are just exponentially increasing. It's not right to say how much is the quantum of jump that is expected. You can only say.
Yeah, and also what's happening to Moore's law. I mean, in terms of also we have to be careful about redundancy, and also we have to have technological redundancy, the cycle, investment cycles, and all of that.
Yeah. So, like I said, we are constantly developing I'm not going to comment too much about semiconductor industry because everybody knows that there is always that effort to pack more transistors into the chip, right? That kept aside, we should look at every technology product has a certain life cycle. Now that life cycle is 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 3 years, depends, right?
How is it different in India versus internationally, if I may ask?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. So we typically in India, we've seen customers using assets between 5 to 6 years in the storage space. Very few customers have gone beyond 6, but it's a good idea to refresh technology once every 5 years in the storage space because it helps them to not only store more data and reduce space, but also essentially look at the other operational expenses going down in terms of operating the storage. So like you said, if I were to just look at that refresh cycle, it is not just about buying and replacing new and old technology. It's about migrating the data. So I think where we'll have to really keep specific emphasis is, how do we migrate data? So rather than looking at a technology provider to another technology provider, things like that, which typically could be a situation, but one has to look at a long-term strategy in terms of the next 10 years. If I were to deploy this technology, I should be able to seamlessly upgrade to the next generation of storage technology. So these are some things I would definitely mention here in this discussion so that it becomes easier. Data migration is not simple. It is quite complex and it is time consuming. And it's a lot of effort which can be avoided. So a right decision right up front can make a lot of life simpler down the line.
So how do you look at it, Sudhakar, from your perspective, what I just said?
Yeah, that's correct. As I agree with Naveen that always the data migration takes a lot of time when you are moving between the technologies. So we always go for the technologies which are easily migratable or the expandable. That is our philosophy at 88 Pictures.
So how is migration easy? I have a 5 terabyte hard disk. If I want to transfer from 5 terabytes to another 5 terabyte, it takes me hours together.
Of course, it takes time when you want to, one USB to another USB. But when it comes to enterprise level, then there are different technologies available which can be on the fly. You can upgrade or you can switch to new technology offerings from them. So that's where we look at companies which provides these kind of technologies.
Okay. Yeah. And I know you said you won't talk about brands. Do you work only with multinational brands or do you work with Indian brands too?
No, most of them are multinational brands we work with. Yeah, we do work with Indian brands as well, but I don't want to take anyone's name here.
No, we did that. So where does the advantage come as far as Dell is concerned versus Indian brands? Naveen and both Sudhakar and Naveen.
So I have been using Dell from a very long time. Especially when it comes to the storage, we are very comfortable with the way the Isilon works. We have been using it from a couple of years now, and we migrated the data from the older storage to the newer storage with the new technology. But still, we haven't lost any single KB of data from there and zero downtime. So that's where we look for technology like this.
Okay. Naveen, now on to you. See, I think Sudhakar is a man of few words.
Yeah.
Right. So, from a Dell Technologies perspective, I think we have a proper life cycle approach to the customer. wherever the customer begins the journey with Dell, I think on that specific area, it's a lot of innovative ways that we provide to customers to have, go through the entire life cycle of, I would not say maturity, but life cycle of growth. Yeah. So be it storage, be it compute, be it the client side of the story. We are today almost addressing, I would say, a large part of our infrastructure requirements of various customers. And as a Dell Technologies perspective, I think we are in a very strong position in terms of providing the full life cycle of growth to the customer.
So that plays a greater emphasis as far as clients are concerned in your scope of things, rather than selling boxes. So it's
Correct.
more consultative approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Our endeavor is to essentially look at the customer's requirement today and how can we work and grow along with their business over a period of their entire journey or life cycle of the business. Yeah.
And how does it benefit you all and the client?
So it's a win-win situation because we are able to meet their demands and their business is able to grow. So I mean, it's a win-win situation. As long as we are able to map to their business growth in terms of meeting to their demands for technology, I think it's a win-win situation for both sides.
And it leads to higher customer retention also. So in terms of customer retention, your entire if you look at your graph, it must be very good.
Yeah, so there's a very specific methodology that Dell looks at various customer support situations, and then we keep improving on a very constant basis. So it's very methodically handled out within Dell.
And so the retention graph must be climbing.
Yeah, and not just that. I think we're also getting a lot of new customers. So that's basically one good customer helps to get two more. So that kind of a scenario. So we're able to get new logos as well.
Oh, fantastic. So Sudhakar, how many have you recommended to Dell? This is just on a lighter vein.
Yeah, I recommend, of course, I recommend to many of my colleagues in the industry. I always, tell them, go for the simple and, futuristic.
Fantastic. Any last words? I think I've run out of my conversation. If I missed any points, I'd love you all to add to them and, give your last few words. We're coming close to we have 3 minutes left. So it'll be great to hear you all talk for the next 3 minutes. People, normally they see me too often and they say, we don't want to see this long-haired guy. Yeah, Naveen, if I've missed any points, I'd love you to touch on them.
No, Anil, I think thanks. It was a great, discussion we had in this part. I would say that, for this specific media and entertainment vertical, we're, as Dell Storage Technologies, we are in a great position to service the customers in terms of providing the right technology, at various entry points. And I would say that we are looking at long term. We're looking at I would say keeping the new avenues and new technology areas that are coming up to provide to the customers.
Okay, Sudhakar, to the content creators, to studios, to IT heads in smaller studios like my company. It's compared to you all, we are small. We are only about 100 people. So what advice would you give us?
So my advice to the industry colleagues is don't look at the requirement of now. Look at future and take the decisions accordingly. So always look for the flexibility and scalable. That's what I would like to say.
Even if it costs more.
That will protect your investments which are doing today.
Even if it costs more, you're saying.
Yeah.
Fabulous advice. Thank you very much, both of you all. It's been very interesting listening to your perspectives, and I hope the industry, people who've been watching this conversation between us have benefited from it. We've had two fabulous panelists today with us. A company which has grown so fast over the past 5 years today that it's it's coming to the notice of almost everyone in the media entertainment industry in India and overseas. And Dell, of course, which is a giant of a company started by a young man in college, while he was in college. Correct me if I'm wrong, Raveen. Michael Dell.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So it's been wonderful talking to you, Naveen and Sudhakar, and thank you to the audience for tuning in, and look forward to many such more conversations in future. This is Anil Banwari saying goodbye and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anil. Thanks, Sudhakar.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Dinal, you didn't close it?
So
Dinal.
after you giving such an amazing closing note, I don't think there's much left for me.
Okay. All right. Jay, was it okay for you? Jay also. Jay. Hello? Jay.
I think he has some network error.
I see him. Hello?